Hi everybody, this is MaDonna from Mad Bees Quilt and Sew, and this is kind of part 2 of binding. So if you'd like to, go back in YouTube and look and see the binding 1 that I did, and that way you'll make sure that you're right where we're supposed to be. In the first class we did a square up of your quilt getting ready for binding. Now we're actually going to make our binding strip. And the way that I like to do that is I prefer to use 2 1/4 inch wide strips when I attach. I like my binding to be firm. And by that I mean I want batting all the way out into that outside edge. Now one of the things that used to happen is years past, people would fold their binding in half and they would actually use a 3/8 inch attaching stitch, and that compensated that 1/8 of an inch that we like now that we want it to be tighter. So I sew mine on with 1/4 of an inch and then I turn. So I cut it 2 1/4 and then turn and put it back on again. So right now though, I'm going to put my strips together so I have one long length, okay? So there's tips and tricks to that part also. So I've cut my fabrics into 2 1/4 inch strips and I'm going to sew them together. So when you have fabrics, you always want to sew them in the same direction. And by that I mean that I'm going to have a selvage end that has printing on it, and then I'll have a selvage end that doesn't, and those two should kiss each other. And that's how your back should go together also. So the selvage that I have right here is a thicker selvage on this edge, and on the opposite end it's a thin. So the next one, I should be attaching a thin one to this, or a thick one to that, okay? So I'm actually gonna attach a thick one. So I've got my thin one going right up to my machine here, okay? I'm going to take the one right off the pile here, which is going to have a thick end on it. I'm going to lay it on top. And Deanna's gonna adjust the camera a little bit. Now you can see I've laid them on top and they're kind of making a letter T or a letter H. I don't know what you're seeing there, but it's just crossing and it's just giving me a little bit of an overlap here so my selvage isn't included, and a little bit of an overlap there. When I'm here, I want to sew from this point here to this point here. On my sewing machine tray table, I have this tape. And this tape gives me a great center line that I'm going to be able to line up my little notch to. So I'm going to put this back on. I'm going to take my fabrics and put them right back underneath here. My needle, I'm going to put in the down position. So I'm just going to hand crank it down. So it's sitting down and in there. Clean up my threads here, get them over to the side. I'm going to butt my needle up to that V right there. So my needle's going to go right into that V, and the red center line on the opposite end is going to go into the other V. So those two pieces are going to be aligned straight across from each other. And I'm going to sew. Hold on to my threads when I get started. And I'm actually watching the red. I'm not looking at my needle, I'm watching the red, and that way I know that my little V is staying right in there. And there we go. So I stitched from this little point to this little point. Now this is an easy visual, so if you're a visual person, click a screenshot of this right now, because this is how it should look. Right side up, right side down, you've got the V. Okay, it's making a nice little V right there for you. I say that it's 2 legs from a pair of pants, and I want to sew across the waist and not through the crotch. So now here comes the next little trick. I've got my piece of fabric there. I'm going to put my hand underneath it. I'm going to take it all the way out to the end and flip it back down. Now my right side is up. Okay, my right side is up. I'm going to take my next piece of fabric, because I've cut my strips already, and I want to make sure I've got the thick edge of my selvage going to the thin edge of my selvage, or the written. This would normally be the edge that's written on. Okay, I'm going to put it face down right on top of that and line it up in exactly the same pattern there. So I've got it looking like the same as the first one did. I can see my notch right there and my notch right there. My needle's going to go right in there. So I'm going to tuck my needle right into that spot there. Needle down, it's right in that V. The other part of my fabric is in the red line, is right there. I watch the red line and I sew straight across. If I keep my eyes on the red line, it's so easy to do this correctly. And it goes right to that tip. Pull this out from underneath here. And now I've got this unit connected and it looks like this. And sometimes it's 6 or 8 of these little things, but my project that I'm working on is not very big. I just have to snip apart my threads inside of here. When I snip them apart, I don't skin either side. I go pretty close to the center, and I'm okay with a little bit of a tail. I like tails because that keeps it all nice and secure for me. I'm gonna open this up, and now I've got one long strip of fabric, all connected, okay? I'm going to take this edge right here, and I'm gonna trim it at 1/4 of an inch. So I've got my ruler, I'm gonna lay this on top of here, look for my stitches. Stitches are not so easy to find, so guess what? Remember that little V that we did earlier? We can line it up with our V and go ahead and clean that off. When I open this up now, look at how pretty that is. That matches up there beautifully. And we're gonna go ahead and do the next one. Lay out your pants legs, put your ruler on it, look for that little V, line up my 1/4 of an inch. That's the pro of using that marking over and over again. Oops. And go ahead and press and trim that. So if this bothers you, you've got these little tabs that are going to stand up here. You're more than welcome to trim those off. We're going to move to the ironing board and I'll show you how to press the next step. So let's head on over. Okay, and are we back, Deanna? We're back. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to find those joining pieces. So here's a joiner right here. I'm going to open this up, and I like to press these open. And the reason I press them open is so that way I don't wind up with a thick piece that I'm going to have to try to hand stitch through. I'm just giving this a good press and pop it open. I don't like the looks of those little tails, so I will take my scissors and just snip those off. Snip and snip. I removed a little bit more bulk then from my project. My next join is down here. Press this open. If I go in there and finger press it first, it really lays nice for you. So there we are, a good press there. Snip, snip. And now on to the last part of this. So this can be done two different ways. One is we can just take our strip and fold it in half. We fold it in half and we give it a nice press. And this just sets up for great success when we do the next part of this. So you can go along your whole strip and press. Just recently, there's a new company out there that's come out with this great little binding tool. And what it is it's a silicone mat that actually has belt loops on it. We slide our fabric through the belt loops. When you slide it through, you make sure the folded edge is down towards your belly, and then you set your iron on it. Once your iron's on it, you just feed your fabric through it, and it helps, it actually makes it quite speedy to be able to press these. It doesn't even notice when you wind up going across one of those junctions. It just goes right through there, so easy. So we're gonna press all of this binding, and then it will be prepped and ready to go. Now, one of the other things I like to do is I like to have it ready to go, and I want the end to be ready. So I will trim off the selvage on that end because I don't want to wind up with that in my quilt. And I only take it off of the one end. It's going to come off of the second end right away when we go to use that. So that is how this goes. We just keep going. But watch, there's the juncture right there. Look out, it just went right underneath that iron. You don't even know it's there. So you can pull it either direction if you're left or right-handed. I don't know what hand I am. At the moment, I think I'm being a righty. The next moment, I might be a lefty. Who knows? Okay, so that is all the way through. That is our first step of this, or the last step of this recording. So I have got all of my binding strip complete. It is ready to attach, which will be our next one. So the couple of tools that I use today are, oops, I can grab it. This is the Quilted Hearts Binding Ease tool. An excellent little add-on for you. And we carry all these in the store and on the website. And then the other one is the diagonal seam tape. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this now. At first I was very leery of it, but I have learned to love it. It is on all of my machines now. And I put it on my tray table, and I actually kind of wrap it around my tray table so that way I don't have to worry about any of the edge pulling up. It probably takes longer to put it on than anything else, but once it's on, I would say I've gotten about 6 months out of each time that I've taped it, and I'm only using 5 inches of tape at a time, so it lasts a really long time. So diagonal seam tape and the binding ease tools are the big tools of today. Everybody have a great day, and remember, this is the place you want to be. Bye now.